Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a fascinating article by Nyambi Emmanuel that pulls back the curtain on a massive yet often invisible force shaping our economy, and that is government spending. We're going to break down exactly how the big decisions made in Washington regarding war, national debt, and domestic programs ripple outward to directly affect your wallet, your rent, and your local community. Let's get right into it. So, here is the core question we really need to ask. When the government spends literally trillions of dollars, who actually feels the economic crisis the most? You see, the main issue isn't just about how much money is going out the door. The deeper, absolutely vital question is who actually benefits from all that spending. When national priorities shift, we have to look closely at who gets protected and who ultimately pays the price. To set the macro reality here, let's just look at the sheer scale of the numbers we're dealing with. It's kind of mind-blowing. According to data from the Congressional Budget Office, we are staring down a projected federal deficit of $1.9 trillion for fiscal year 2026. And, well, it doesn't stop there. That deficit is projected to grow to $3.1 trillion, which is about 6.7% of our total GDP by 2036. For some context, that is way above the 50-year historical average of 3.8%. We're talking about a massive pool of public money heavily driven by rising net interest costs. Now, contrast that massive deficit with this figure. Recent reporting from the Washington Post highlights that the Pentagon submitted a staggering $1.5 trillion defense budget request for fiscal year 2027. Just to give you a granular sense of what is actually tucked inside that huge number, it includes nearly $75 billion earmarked just for unmanned weapon systems and large missile restocking requests. When you break all those numbers down, it turns out about 1/6 of all federal spending is dedicated exclusively to national defense. That is a seriously significant slice of the national pie. And it really stands out, especially when we look at broader trends, where global military spending recently hit $2.89 trillion. Which brings us to a simple but totally profound economic rule: opportunity cost. If you take away anything today, let it be this, because it's the absolute pivot point for understanding the trade-offs of national budgets. Basically, when the government spends money in one area, it gives up the opportunity to spend that exact same money somewhere else. Public funds are finite. That means every single decision is a trade-off. Picture a set of scales to see what opportunity cost looks like in real life. Every dollar impartially committed to weapons procurement and defense contractors is a dollar that is simply not spent on building affordable housing. Right now, we're facing an economic crisis, with soaring rents across the country. So money diverted to defense means we miss a crucial opportunity to reduce that rent pressure and tackle homelessness in our own communities. Building on that trade-off, think about long-term funding from missile replenishment and foreign military aid on one side of the scale versus funding that could relieve crushing household medical debt or support Medicaid on the other. It's a stark reality of how war spending has to be weighed against domestic needs. And to be clear, it's not about whether national security matters. It obviously does. It's about how that spending is balanced against the financial security of everyday families who are currently struggling. But hey, it's not just defense spending eating up the budget. The cost of our national debt is surging right alongside it. The CBO projects that our net interest payments will grow from 3.3% of GDP in 2026 to 4.6% by 2036. So, why does this matter to you? Well, rising debt interest payments consume your taxpayer dollars just to pay lenders for past borrowing. Those are dollars that are no longer available to fund future community relief, like infrastructure, education, or healthcare. So the crucial point here is how this federal borrowing actively impacts your local economy. Federal borrowing can literally crowd out private investment. In fact, a $1 increase in the federal deficit reduces private investment by about 33 cents. That means there's significantly less private capital available out there to fund small businesses, build out local economies, and create jobs right where you live. Furthermore, there's a real domino effect here. Defense escalation and global conflicts sneak right into your everyday prices through these indirect inflation channels. You know, war disrupts energy markets, spikes fuel costs, and causes massive shipping delays. Plus, a huge defense buildup increases the demand for metals, electronics, and skilled labor. Add in global insurance uncertainty, and all of this pushes costs up, meaning you end up paying more for groceries, gas, and utilities as a direct result of these conflicts. Meanwhile, as defense budgets and interest costs keep climbing, what's happening to domestic support? Well, the fiscal year 2026 skinny budget, which is essentially a stripped-down baseline spending proposal from the White House, stated it would reduce non-defense discretionary spending by $163 billion. That is a 23% cut from enacted levels, and it's happening while they are simultaneously increasing defense and border security priorities. The harsh reality is when those domestic programs get cut, the costs don't just magically disappear. Not at all. The burden is simply shifted directly onto households that are already struggling with inflation. If the government cuts food assistance, more grocery costs shift to families. Cut Medicaid, that means more medical bills and medical debt for patients. Restrict rental assistance, you're looking at a much higher eviction risk. The cost is simply transferred straight to you. This raises a very impartial but incredibly critical question. Who actually benefits from our spending choices? While massive defense spending provides very reliable revenue for large defense firms and subcontractors, it doesn't necessarily help the local entrepreneur down the street who desperately needs a small business grant just to survive and hire within their community. Now, I really want to be clear here, government spending isn't automatically a bad thing. The source material emphasizes that targeted domestic spending can actually reduce financial pressure and stabilize families. Investments in affordable housing, SNAP food assistance, childcare, and workforce training programs actually free up income. They keep parents in the workforce and help displaced workers transition to new jobs. This is the kind of spending that actively prevents deeper crises. All of this connects back to a really powerful historical critique: Occupy Wall Street. Occupy wasn't just angry at Wall Street greed. It was fundamentally about public policy and who the government chooses to protect. Back then, the concern was that banks were protected while families absorbed the crisis. Today, we're looking at a very similar spending dynamic. Large defense contractors and institutions often receive priority funding while everyday households are left absorbing inflation and benefit cuts. It forces us to ask, does public money actually serve the majority? I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Government spending is never neutral. It is the absolute clearest way to see whose interests are being prioritized during an economic crisis. So when you're looking at future federal budgets, I want you to ask yourself, who is being prioritized here and who is absorbing the cost? Are we protecting powerful institutions or are we protecting everyday households? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep these questions in mind the next time you see a headline about $1 trillion budget.